Discovering Patti Smith in my 20s as an aspiring poet and an overthinker was the greatest gift the universe could bestow upon me. I had heard of Patti beforehand through the mentions of her name in Robert Mapplethorpe's life and career. However, it wasn't until I discovered her book, Just Kids, where I truly saw and witnessed her magic as an artist. Never in my life had I felt incredibly seen for all of my struggles, my dreams, and aspirations of trying to be an artist whilst juggling my mundane young adult responsibilities. Her and I had very similar childhood experiences. We were both shy, tall, and lanky girls growing up, and neither of us were too feminine, and we indulged in fantasy battles and activities that were deemed boyish, none of which I regret, as I had so much fun with my friends and classmates playing war on the school playground and devising battlefield strategies. So starstruck is probably the closest that comes to describing how I felt after reading her book and how I still feel every time I listen to her interviews and learn more about her. She arrived in a crucial time in my life where my journey as a poet and as an artist is just taking off. Her words rev up my creative engine, and now anytime that I feel stuck, I listen to her or her songs or her interviews, and I gain the motivation to spring into action. One interview in particular has deeply resonated with me, titled Poets Don't Make Money, 1976, Patti Smith.
All my life, I've been trying to get back to that freedom. And then I discovered when I was about 12 years old, 13, art. And art was a great revelation to me. And then all my life, it's still that freedom I had as a child. Poetry was the most releasing drug for me. Well, I guess I was romantic, but I read all these books about Brancusi, Diliani, Rimbaud, all of them. None of them had money. All poor, all struggling, all having barely the money to buy a notebook to write their poetry, all having to write their poetry on, grateful for this, paper, papier,
One part that really struck me was when she highlighted the poverty that most great poets endured when they were honing their craft. They were lucky if they could even find a piece of napkin or receipt paper to write down their words. And this made me realize my immense privilege to be able to afford pen and paper and, in fact, have the luxury of choosing what type of notebook I'd prefer to write on. And such simplicities in life can be so easily overlooked if we don't take the time to appreciate them. So hearing her emphasize this single fact was kind of like a jump start to get out of my writer's block and simply compose, and to not hide behind the elaborate excuses that I had made up for myself. Luckily, composing poetry is rather easy for me, and in hindsight, I fear it was just the laziness that actually held me back. Or perhaps it was arrogance that I'll have time for it later on. The best ideas are produced now, like this. I could have held off on writing about my undying love for Patti to a later time, maybe even years down the line where I've earned the right to speak on her impact in my life. But why wait? In my personal experience, the longer I hold off on not saying something, the less space there is for me to actually say anything. And words left unspoken, art left uncreated, and choices left unmade are perhaps the scariest phenomena for me. I think there is no greater killer of dreams than inaction, especially when you find yourself staring down multiple roads, all varied with their own victories and struggles. You can kind of end up freezing and doing nothing. For me, that and mediocrity are my greatest fears. But I digress. I think in the past 2 months alone, I have consumed at least 2 to 3 pieces of media every day regarding Patti Smith, whether it be her book, Just Kids, or a book of days, or to her song, or to an interview. I have made it my morning ritual for myself to have coffee and then read something written by Patti or about Patti, and then start my day. And right now my collection has 2 new editions. I bought Year of the Monkey and A Book of Days, both written by her. I've also been composing poetry in the mornings, especially during the days where I start work at a later time. And in doing so, I've created a silent manifesto for my life. I say silent because I have yet to discover the proper and beautiful words to compose this new lifestyle that I'm attempting to implement. I feel that Patti Smith is my creative and even spiritual guardian angel, encouraging me from afar. Just her existence alone has given me a surge of motivation that's never happened before in my life. And this is not an exaggeration, it's not a hyperbole. In all my 20-something years of existence, I have never related to any public figure the way that I have with Patti. And a bit of context, growing up, as I said, I was tall and kind of awkward and lanky, and a lanky girl for my age, just like Patti, and I was incredibly shy with strangers. Oh my god, I would not even dare to ask the waiter to get the check or anything. And even with my own extended family, I was very shy with them for some time. Not to mention, I couldn't speak my mother tongue, which is Mongolian, all that well. So, yeah, that definitely added on to that experience. I mean, not that it's any better now, but at least now I don't really care, and I'll just say whatever I need to say. I was also a huge bookworm. I would devour mystery novels by the stack. And luckily, I did come from a family of literary fanatics. Both my mother and grandfather were into literature, and she was a Russian language teacher back in the day. So I grew up in a household surrounded by books. And just like Patti, I discovered art at a very young age. However, it wasn't until high school that it really clicked in my mind that, oh wow, this is what I want to do with my life.
Frightened by death when you saw a dead person when you were a kid. A lot of kids, if they go to a funeral or see an open casket, they get very, very morbid about death.
No, actually, to tell you the truth, I got hollered at because I wanted, what I did is, I think Bertie the Bunyip was on. Remember Bertie the Bunyip?
Sure. Oh, sure.
Bertie the Bunyip was on. We were at a wake, and I was trying to drag the TV, and I thought that, my little friend, was a little friend of mine, shouldn't be missing Bertie the Bunyip with all these grown-ups around. But, it didn't. I understood it, it's not so bad. I think of death, especially now, I've gone through certain things in my life, as like a really magical extension of being in love. You know how great you feel when you're in love? You feel like...
No, I don't recall that. It's been a long time for old Tom.
Come
yeah,
on.
no, it's been a long
And just like everyone else, there's me when I'm at my job doing my work. Then there's me outside of my responsibilities where I can just exist as a creative being. And that's the part of me that's been screaming, that's been rebelling to be let out and expressed for months now. So this is me succumbing to the incessant need to put my words, to put my poetry and my work out there in the open void. And I feel that the suffocating cage and pressure of fitting in is actually no longer relevant in my life anymore. And I think partly this has happened because of the events at the beginning of the year, and then this whole journey that I've been on for the past 10-something months or 9 months. And I have so many moments during the day where I think about free will and what that constitutes. As mentioned in my video, You'll Be Fine, I'm still continuing to take small steps to break out of this mold that does not fit me anymore. And one recent example was early October. I went to Központ at Madak Imre Tér, excuse my pronunciation, and I just had a beer by myself. And I sat down next to these two lovely girls my age. One was Hungarian and the other one was Argentinian. And they were both named Camilla. It was such a cute coincidence. And shout out to you guys if you guys are watching this. And yeah, I just made conversation with them. Literally, that night, I had no plans. I had no expectations. I knew I wanted to get out of the house. And I did. I made my way down to Központ. I figured I might just have a beer, see where the night takes me. And I had no idea what to expect. And I had a wonderful conversation out of that experience. So I've been allowing and trusting the universe to guide me to the right people and the right conversations. And it has been going great so far. However, this is still the very beginning to a lifelong journey of being the master and writer of my own life. Now, going back to Patti, she once said in an interview with Harvard Business Review, "My aim with Album Horses was to let outsiders like me, the weird kids, the gay kids, the kids whose parents disowned them, know they weren't alone, and to create a space for new generations." And this is exactly what she did. If I were to describe myself, I would say I'm unconventional and painstakingly curious. And these character traits of mine have often coined me as perhaps the odd friend, especially for people who have met me for the first time. And over the years, though, I have gotten better at hiding this aspect and putting on a facade, depending on the crowd that I'm with. So very much like a social chameleon. And you can already guess that this act of mine has exhausted me quite a few times. Which is also why I'm here now in this headspace relating to Patti's words and her magic and her essence. This will probably sound crazy, but I feel like I've known her my entire life. And to speak on a greater impact, she also said this in the same interview. She said, "Kids will stop me on the street, take a copy out of their backpack covered with wine and coffee stains and pencil scribblings and ask me to sign. A blessing." And that's just it. This is exactly how I felt when reading her book Just Kids. Just Kids is a true diamond. It is a true literary and artistic gem of our time. Patti's ability to transcend beyond generations and to impact people is astonishing. I think for the first time in my life, I finally have an answer to the question, what's your favorite book? And her book doesn't feel like a pretentious snob memoir of her younger years with Robert and her friends. No. In fact, it feels like you're reading your best friend's diary or your super cool aunt's diary when she was in her 20s, starting out in New York in the 70s. Her style of writing invites you in, offers you a cozy place by the fire, hands you hot cocoa in your hands, and then plays soft jazz music in the background. Just Kids is a true testament on how invigorating the raw human experience and the journey to finding oneself, especially as an artist, can be. And in a way, I feel like I'm part of this cool secret club with all the other readers who've read Just Kids. There is camaraderie and an unspoken union that can be felt after finishing the book. Born as Patricia Lee Smith in 1946 in Chicago, Illinois, she was the eldest of 4 children. Her early years are just as interesting as her time in New York, but for the sake of the video, I will only speak about her time in the late 60s and 70s. So Patti moved to New York in 1967 in a very fated and destined way. So back home, she didn't have enough bus fare to purchase her ticket, yet by some miraculous chance, she found an abandoned purse in a phone booth and took the remaining change from the purse. So with that, her great journey to becoming Patti Smith, as we know her, the artist, poet, and songwriter, started. That very summer, she met Robert Mapplethorpe, whom I adore just as much. And he was an enigma of a person who would become her lover and later on a lifelong friend. Every time she speaks about Robert in interviews, I feel myself tearing up because that's how special and unique their bond was. It's very similar to how Iman talks about her late husband David Bowie. And even though Patti went on to marry someone else, I think her love with Robert transcends time and barriers. I would even describe their bond as true love, and they were able to sustain this pure form of love through their mutual respect for their work. They were both motivated to create something bigger than themselves, to express the beauty, the ugliness, the joy and sadness around them in their own respective mediums. For Patti, it was through singing, poetry, writing, and drawing. And for Robert, it was through painting, sculpting, and, of course, photography. And in my opinion, I would rather live and die being someone's muse and vice versa than having a conventional marriage. I think the greatest honor in life is to be perceived through the eyes of an artist and to be memorialized by their unique creative spirit. And there's a beautiful quote that puts this into better words. Before you die, experience the love of a writer, poet, or painter. If you're lucky enough, be an artist's muse. They will immortalize you. And immortalize she did, and Robert as well. Before, of course, his tragic passing, he immortalized Patti. And had he not have done that, I would not have discovered her, and I would not have learned of their beautiful, magical, and just incredibly once-in-a-lifetime bond that they shared. So with that, I hope parts of this video have inspired you to go out there and to create, to work on the project that you've been holding off on, that song that remains unwritten, or that canvas that remains blank. Take these words, thoughts, and reflections and make your work happen. If anything in this life, if you can dedicate yourself to your work, that is the greatest joy and the greatest pleasure that you can have as an artist, and especially as a poet. I also hope that if you didn't already know about Patti Smith or Robert Mapplethorpe, you're now at least curious about them. I hope that this has inspired you to read Just Kids, because seriously, that is the most wonderful book, and I cannot recommend it enough. You are the greatest story that's waiting to be written. And thank you so much for watching and staying until the end. Your time means everything to me. And take care and see you in my next video. Bye!